Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to wait a few more minutes here before we start. And so we'll just wait a few and listen to some Tennessee music. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for today's Checkerboard Chat, COVID-19 and employee mental health in the workspace. We are so excited to have you all here today. First, I want to go over some ground rules. You will notice that your mic has been muted. This will be the case for the duration of the webinar to avoid any disruption for our presenters. If you have a question or comment, please use the Q&A feature to share. Feel free to enter questions throughout the duration of the presentation. Questions or comments will be answered at the end of the presentation. So first, I'd like to welcome our panelists today, Jackie Kavnar, a 1994 graduate of the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and Desiree Kelly. So Jackie joined Mental Health America of Mid-South in 2017. Jackie's background in public relations, coupled with her MBA in healthcare management and nonprofit management, equips her to lead the day-to-day operations while keeping a strategic eye on the future. Jackie has worked in community development and physician recruitment for a nonprofit entity and a national hospital organization. Jackie serves as a member of the UT Knoxville Alumni Board of Directors. Dr. Kelly is a public health and education manager at Mental Health America of Mid-South. She provides workplace wellness education for Middle Tennessee employers and oversees MHA's Erasing the Stigma program. Desiree is an adjunct professor at Columbia State College. She sits on many committees designed to advocate for children and adolescents in Tennessee. Thank you, Jackie and Desiree, for being here today. And now I'll turn it over to you.
Yay. So we're going to get started this morning. I think it's afternoon for you guys. It's morning on my end, but I want you to be present and I want you to be here for this entire presentation. So how do we do that? We limit distractions because I'm going to give you some strategies and tips that's going to help you deal with stress during the COVID era. Want to do a quick reminder, we are not therapists, we are educators. So the information that we're providing is designed to help you, right? So if you find anything here that you need to double check and or talk to your physician about or your clinician, definitely reach out to them, okay? So it is my pleasure to talk to you about COVID-19 and employee mental health in the workplace. Great job. You are now taking the first step in investing in your mental health. What I would like for you to do, I would like for you to have a moment and listen to this song that I'm about to play. After one rotation, I want you to actually start putting the words that pop into your mind in the chat box. The words for me would be calm, reflective, and focused. You can't have my words, they're all mine. I want you to come up with new ones. Here we go. So we're not going to let you listen to the entire song because we don't have that much time, but some of the words are carefree, right? That's one of the words that I see in the chat box. So how many people found that they were involuntarily relaxing? How many people found that they were actually having a moment to gather themselves? Perfect. That is the purpose of the song. This song is called Weightless by Marconi Union. And it is a song that was developed with sound therapists to help you focus and rebalance, right? One of the things that I love about this song, it is called the most relaxing songs in existence. Why? Thank you for asking. Why? Because the primary reason for this song is to reduce blood pressure, cortisol levels, and there's one other thing that the pitch of the song does, but it's amazing. Look it up, but put it on your playlist because it is phenomenal. Deal with some things that you're going through and it resonates with the body. Okay, this song is so productive that they'll tell you not to drive during this song because they don't want to be responsible for car accidents. Okay, so look at this statement. Health is a state of mind, wellness is a state of being. So as I move through the next slides, let me ask you something. Do we all have mental illness? Put it in the chat room, let me know. Do we all have mental illness? Okay. Some of us are thinking yes, some of us are thinking no. So while we talk about that, let's go on to the next slide so we can define it. Physical and mental health have strong connections. Health means so much more than freedom from disease. If health is a state of body, wellness is a state of mind and being, right? So good mental health is not only being free from any type of chronic disease or long-term disease, but it's the absence of depression and anxiety and other disorders, okay? So let's think about that for a minute. I absolutely love the World Health Organization because it gives us this wonderful statement about everyone has mental health, regardless if they are diagnosed with a mental illness. So that tells us that when we have positive mental health, it gives us the ability to enjoy life, bounce back after difficult experiences, right? Adapt to adversity, balance different elements of life, such as family and work life, particularly since we are all operating within the same space, our social, our family, our professional, and our spiritual, right? So how are we balancing all of our dimensions to be the best version of ourselves? I want you to watch this video. This video is really, really important to let you know that if you have one bad day throughout the week, that doesn't mean your mental health is in jeopardy. That just means that that's like a red flag or a trigger to help us know that it's time to get some of our self-care techniques in place, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. So I want you to watch this video for a second.
I am a mother,
a father, son,
daughter,
brother,
a sister. I am a student,
a stay-at-home mom,
construction worker,
volunteer,
I am loving,
smart,
funny,
generous,
way too generous.
I am all of the amazing things you see.
But there's something you can't see.
or don't see.
Something that I don't let anybody see. Like when I'm alone.
In a room full of people.
I can't get out of bed.
And maybe I've gained weight.
Or lost weight.
Why do men always lose weight?
It can get dark in here.
really dark.
Addicted to food,
The web,
Work,
sex,
alcohol,
Something to take the pain away.
to feel happy.
To feel something.
anything, nothing.
Because depression isn't a mood.
It's not a passing thing.
Or a bad day.
It's a disease. I can't just get over it. It feels like I'm underwater.
Drowning.
And sometimes I think you'd be better off without me.
I am telling you this. All of this.
Because I need help.
and you are my wife.
My dad,
My husband.
my kids.
My boss.
So please, don't judge me.
Leave me.
Fire me.
Please be patient.
Don't give up on me.
Just be there for as long as it takes.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't real.
So this is the wonderful thing about that video. We already talked about mental health. Mental health is having a bad day and being absence of any type of disease, right? Or illness or circumstance, right? But with mental illness, it's a diagnosed disease. And there are so many different mental illnesses, and they all have different symptoms. That video has so many great points. Number one, people, adults, we are concerned about what is showing when we're not showing our best face, or we're not feeling well, or we're diagnosed with a mental illness. That's when stigma comes involved. You have so many different professionals who have so many different roles in life. We're moms, we're dads, but we're also bosses and CEOs and professors. And so when we are impacted by mental illness, it hits us very differently and in very different ways. And just because mental illness doesn't affect me the way it affects Jackie or Mallory, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hold its place, right? Because it has big impact on our workspaces. Out the video, one of the things that resonated with me is, please don't fire me. I've had so many adults say, I don't want to go to my boss and tell them I'm having a bout of depression. Instead, I'll go to my boss and say I have a migraine, or I don't feel well and I think I'm catching a cold, so they can go home and deal with their mental illness. That's how we've got to change the conversation. So as you look at the slides, these are all the most common signs of mental illness in adults, right? Now, if you have one or two of these signs, okay, let's make notes. Let's start to talk to our colleagues, our trusted circle. Let's start to talk to our clinician and say, you know what? I've had excessive worrying for like 2 weeks, and now I'm starting to think a little bit about hurting myself. That's major, because I want you to remember, if you don't take anything else from this presentation, it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay for you to sit in that sadness, to sit in that anger, to sit in that frustration. So, take your cameras out, take a picture of this, and be vigilant in our fight to avoid stigmatizing mental health. So why is it so important about faculty and staff and mental health stressors? Okay, let me tell you. Here are some things that are very important when we start to talk about how mental illness affects our productivity. We think about job insecurity, particularly during the time of COVID, right? Because some things are changing and it's probably never going to go back to being like it used to be. We have a cost associated with COVID, lack of support from the top, heavy workloads. It's so many different things that we deal with, particularly the virtual world. We were discussing with Mallory earlier. It's so funny because sometimes technology will let you be great and sometimes it will not. And that's stressful for people. Sometimes people will experience anxiety for that. So I want you to take a moment and look at this quote. If you agree with it, I think you can do emojis or hand claps in the chat area. If you can't, just mentally do it. I'll feel the energy. But mental health in academia is too often a forgotten footnote. That needs to change. Because it's taboo to talk about mental health of faculty and staff within our workplaces. People don't want to do it. So how do we make sure that mental health is recognized on campus among staff and faculty members? These are some of the things that you can do. You can make mental health self-assessment tools, right? You can provide free subsidized lifestyle coaching. You can also create and maintain dedicated quiet spaces. You can have those blue rooms and those green rooms where staff can go to just to shut down. All of this is important. We need those moments, particularly dealing with students, right? Because they're in a place where they're dealing with different stressors that we don't even know about. So as we're thinking about that, right, I want to get into the 9 tips for managing your mental health. Now, this is the guts of the presentation. This is going to tell you some tips and some strategies to utilize. So let's jump into it. One thing for certain, accept the temporary reality of the situation. Okay? This is not going to be our reality forever. So focus on that when you get sad and you get angry or lonely. Think about, you know what, this is going to change. Embrace your feelings. Your feelings are amazing. So if you feel sad that day, that's okay. If you feel angry, if you feel excited, if you feel happy, if you feel love, embrace all their feelings. There's nothing wrong with that. When you embrace your feelings, what you tend to do is let your body and your mind know it's okay to feel this way. Don't think about feelings as positive or negative. Okay? Feelings are just what they are. Be mindful of your loneliness symptoms. Make sure that you are taking care of how to manage those things. Know that it's okay not to be okay. That is the major statement. You might not be okay every day this week, and then on Friday, you're okay. Notate that. Make sure that you know that somebody's out there. Cultivate mindfulness. We're going to talk about mindfulness here in the upcoming slides, but how do you shut down? How do you flex your mindfulness muscle? What do you do? Is it nature? Do you read a book? Do you binge watch a show that you might have loved in the past and you say, you know what, this is a happy place for me? Do you listen to music? Do you dance it out? It's so many different things you can do. This is my favorite one, number 7, unplug and unfollow toxic people. Pre-COVID, I had so many followers and I had so many social media that I would follow the sites and the programs and the apps. I have 2 that I follow and they're work related, okay? And my following list had went down dramatically because in my mind, I need positive energy coming for me 24/7 and not negative. And sometimes that looks like people too. And you got to be able to manage that. Listen to music. Music is therapy, right? You got to have several different playlists. Your playlist can call COVID and in a funk. And then you listen to that. It could be no COVID blues. We're not going to have that today. And put all your favorite songs in one outlet and play it while you're working. Music, there's so much research based with music helping you improve your mood, be more productive, and allowing you to experience your different emotions positive ways, right? And then practice self-care. Self-care looks different for everyone. And because of that, we don't put it in a box because my self-care looks completely different from Jackie's. My self-care looks completely different from Tisha's. My self-care looks completely different. And it's how I feel about the situation. It's what makes me feel good for that day. So we're going to talk a little bit about some things that you can do. One in particular, the perfect way to reset your mind from those Zoom sessions, from those constant meetings, from those calls, is to take a break. Okay. So you're asking me, how do I take a break? How can I still incorporate that lifestyle in this space? I'm glad you asked. Find your happy space by scheduling breaks every hour. And I'm not talking about 30-minute breaks that we used to have when we were in the community. I'm talking about 2 to 5 minute breaks to help you refocus. And in that time, you can smell essential oils. You can smell lavender. You can smell other essential oils that make you productive, like Energy and Thrive. They have them out there. You can also listen to music. You can listen to one positive song that makes you feel powerful and that you can conquer the world, right? That's within 2 minutes to 5 minutes. You can also breathe. Deep breathing has so much research based that lets you know. It allows you to refocus. It helps you reset your brain. It also helps you relax and calm down from any stressful things that are going on in your world. Okay, so 2 minutes, what is that? You can go to your happy place. Matter of fact, you could create a picture slideshow of moments of happiness for you and play it for 2 minutes with music. Take care of your mental space and your health space and your health care because it's important. Now, we're going to talk about activating those support circles because that's major too. Do you have a support circle? Your homework. I want you to identify 3 people that are in your support circle, right? This is the caveat. One has to be a coworker, one has to be a family member, and one has to be a friend. They can't overlap. Now, some of us went, oh my gosh, don't give me homework. But others were like, oh, I can do that easily. So for the ones who were struggling, make sure that you're able to do that because this is your support. This is who you can call when you can't get out of bed. This is who you can call when we've had loss from COVID. This is who you can call when you're just tired and you just want to scream it out. This is your support, right? So make sure you have that because it's important. Give your mind the right fuel. I'm not going to stay there very long because I need to break up with the refrigerator. But at the end of the day, I have been incorporating more healthy things because when I do get back out in the community, I want to fit my clothes. I mean, that's just major for me, right? So I know I'm not alone. I want you to be able to know the difference between the two. Journal and color. They have so many great coloring books for adults now. It is monumental, right? I was sharing with Mallory the other day that it has #MomLife and it has so many awesome different pictures that you can color and relax. And this is the thing, you can color while you're in a meeting. You can jot notes and research shows that you're more productive when you're able to get your mind focused on coloring and listening. And when somebody asks you something, you can say, oh, I know exactly what you were talking about. This is my example, as opposed to if you were trying to multitask, which is a myth, right? If you were trying to switch tasks and do something differently. Avoid toxicity at all costs and rest your eyes. When we're looking at the computer for 8 or 9 hours a day, we're more prone to migraines, to or just regular headaches, eye strain. So what we would love to do is to give you a moment to look away. And this is what that looks like. You look away and you blink and give those eyes a rest, or you look at the screen and close your eyes, right? Rest your eyes, because we want you to come out of this thing stronger and better. Now, how do you know when enough is really enough? That is such a great question. I want everybody to think about stress. How do you define stress in your life? And if you really, really want to put it in a chat room, I would love to see it. But how do you define stress? What does that look like for you? So when we talk about stress, stress is your body's reaction to a challenge or demand. Okay. That can be positive challenges, which is called eustress, or negative challenges, which is distress. So how does your body react? These are some of the things that your body does when you are stressed. You can get tension headaches, you can have poor memory, you can be indecisive, you can be irritable with your coworkers, block creativity, difficulty concentrating. These things are real, and we've got to address them before they become chronic illnesses. So between stress and workplace burnout, what are the differences? Because a lot of times you'll hear people use, oh, I'm so burnt out, I'm so overwhelmed. You need to know the difference, because you got to be able to identify how to turn it around or talk to your doctor about getting help. So burnout is the feeling of physical and emotional exhaustion due to stress, or poor working conditions under demanding conditions. So some people might see COVID as burning you out. And if that is the case, that's okay. What we have to do is get you some type of assistance. Now, if you answered yes to any of or all of these questions, let's start taking note of our mental health. If you feel run down or drained every day that you go to work, okay? If you have negative thinking about your job, if it's easy to frustrate you on the job, those are things that we have to deal with, because you're leading into a place of no return, and we don't want you to be burnt out. So how is the burnout symptoms different from the compassion symptoms? Well, burnout has all of these symptoms associated with it. Okay, so I'm gonna take a moment, I'm not gonna read them all, but every day is a bad day. When you think about burnout, is every day a bad day? That's major. Now, we're all going to experience some type of change in appetite or sleep habits during COVID. Insomnia has been really, really big for me, because I have not been able to shut down my brain, because I feel like I'm never out of this space. But I have incorporated different apps to help me relax, which Android and iPhone has many of those, and a lot of them are free. A lot of them are insurance covers. So I have tried to make sure that my space, when I start shutting down, is a calm space. As adults, we'll bring our phone with us to bed and then wonder why we can't go to sleep hours and hours later. Okay, so we have to come up with a routine where we can completely start shutting down to get ready for bed. So when we talk about compassion fatigue, these are the things that you need to know. Many of us have heard compassion fatigue associated with secondary traumatic stress. So with compassion fatigue, there's things that you should remember. It's similar to symptoms of burnout. Compassion fatigue is when you fixate on absorbing trauma and emotional stressors of others. And that's how it creates secondary traumatic stress. And secondary traumatic stress is the emotional duress that you feel after dealing with an individual, whatever it could be, right? It could be your social circle, your best friend. It could be your student with everything that they're going on. It could be a colleague with the losses, okay? So some of these symptoms of compassion fatigue: no longer able to laugh and have fun when you're on the Zoom calls, when appropriate. You're more prone to gossip. Difficulty meeting deadlines because you're just tired. You don't want to really do anything. And that's okay. But what we need to do is get you some type of help and get you a self-care plan so you won't lose your job for inactivity, right? We have to open those conversations with our bosses and say, you know what, this is what I'm dealing with. What can you recommend? And you have to know that your job is a safe space. So if you are a department head, think about it. How can you make those spaces safe? So giving you a lot of information. Before I introduce Jackie, I want to jump into some work resilience skills, right? And coping strategies. Take a look at this list. These are some of the strategies they give to professors, people who work in academia, staff. These are some of the things that we have to do. A couple of things that stand out to me is activate your support circle. You should have a support circle at work, and you should have a support circle in your social life. Two different things. And don't always talk about work. Talk about fun things. Me and one of my colleagues, her name is Courtney, we have a vent session, right? And what we do when we were in the office, if anything bothered us, if anything frustrated us, it could be just simple things. We will go and we will say, I need a vent session. And so we came up with the concept of, you got 2 minutes to vent. You could tell me anything you want to. This is a safe space, 2 minutes. And after that, we're not gonna talk about it anymore. We're gonna come up with an action plan, and then we're gonna only look at positive outcomes because we vented. I've said this to probably thousands of professionals, particularly adult professionals, and the same thing keeps entering into my email. You know, I couldn't even get to 2 minutes. Once I got all of that off my chest in the first minute, I was good. I'm like, well, great. That's wonderful. So practice that, right? Other things that you can do is remind yourself that everything is not your responsibility. And I'm speaking to my type A people. Everything is not our responsibility. If it's not in our lane, we need to stop putting it as our priority, okay? Take time off when you feel overwhelmed. You might have to have a half a day mental health day, and that's okay. Don't ever feel bad about your self-care because it's not selfish. Another thing, communicate effectively. You can't expect your bosses and your colleagues to know that you're struggling if you don't talk to them and say, today's just not a good day. And you can use that language. Hey, how are you doing? Because everybody has an introduction before the Zoom, right? You can easily put in the chat room, I am here. I am just not going to do my screen today. Welcome everybody, but take ownership of how you feel. Now, other things. Set healthy boundaries for yourself. That's another thing about taking ownership of how you feel. But build in transition time. When we were in the community, some of us had to drive 45 minutes. Some of us had to drive an hour. Nashville traffic is bananas. So I can't imagine what the traffic is like where you guys are located. But I also feel like if you build in that time to start getting your mind ready to face your home life, it will be a better outcome. That's when you can tap into Waitlist by Marconi Union. They have like 3 different versions. They have a 2-minute version, a 2-hour version, and a 10-hour version. So it's kind of amazing the things that you can incorporate to help you, manage your emotions better. That's what we want you to do. Be present and tune in for everything. Don't try to multitask because it's a myth. And again, look it up. It's only like, I think about 3% of the population that can do it effectively. And when we talk about that, multitasking is completing every task that you do simultaneously. So if you had a call and you were on a Zoom call and you were trying to write an email, would you send that email without checking it? No, because people will start to question if you're having some type of breakdown at home, right? Because it wouldn't be correct. It wouldn't be accurate. So you have to go ahead and start dedicating the time where time is efficient. Lastly, before I introduce Jackie, know your triggers and stressors. They are important. When you know your triggers and stressors, you can do many, many things to avoid them. Okay. Jackie, take it away.
Thank you so much, Desiree. And as always, incredible tips that all of us can use and incorporate every day. Let's look at this slide for a second and really think about the stigma around mental health and why do we have so much stigma? And following, I'm going to give you some tips on how to work around it. So next, please. So all of us are leaders in some way. All of us are. So we need to think about ways that our words and our actions impact our coworkers up and down the line, and think about everything we know just with our own families and our own lives as well. I mean, how can we help people when they're hungry or anxious or abused or depressed? How can we accomplish our jobs while we're in isolation? And words and actions impact all people differently. So it's all about knowing your message and knowing your audience and how what you're saying is received. So we can also eliminate toxic things in our lives, as Desiree talked about earlier. And we know that stigma is hard, and that we're working every day to change things. And how can we accomplish our jobs when we're struggling? So next, please. Next slide,
Hey,
please.
Jackie, can I jump in and say something about stigma real quick?
Of
Do you
course,
mind?
Desiree.
Okay.
No,
So I kind of feel like if you don't know what stigma means, you'll think that doesn't affect me. But stigma happens daily, right? Stigma happens when you have a coworker who might be taking off a lot and you're not privy to why they're taking off a lot. And you might say, well, what's going on with them? I would like to take off like that. Let's stay in your lane, right? We don't know what they're going through. So a better way to help our coworkers and our friends is to say, I miss you. How can I support you? Because stigma is a way to generally hurt the mental health community by our words and actions. So I'm sorry, Jackie, I had to jump in and say that because I get a lot of input. I'm done.
No, I'm glad you did. Thank you so much. So how can we help people who are struggling with mental health? And again, know your audience and know how your messages are received. You know, find time to have these conversations. Maybe you need to get up and just walk around the building. Maybe you don't even need to have conversations in the office. So take a snapshot of this screen, or, you know, grab your phone and take a picture and use these tips as you go back into the office. So next slide, please. So how can we lead by example? You know, delegate, take time for yourself, share some of your self-care tips with some of your coworkers, and recognize that sometimes people do just need a break. As Desiree mentioned earlier, maybe you need half a day for your mental health care. You know, there's no reason to feel that mental health is not equal and comparable and just as strong as your physical health, because the two do feed into each other. Next slide, please. So get help now. We have screenings that are free, that are confidential on our website. You can scan this QR code and it will take you directly to the screenings. I believe there are 10 covering everything from depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Also one for parents to take on behalf of their children to maybe check and see how they're feeling about their kids, and if they need to seek help from their pediatrician or another behavioral health care provider. So next slide, please. So use your EAP. A lot of people are suspicious of their EAPs, their employee assistance programs. Please know they are confidential and part of your insurance, and HIPAA rules apply there as they would for any doctor's visit for your physical health. Please reach out and feel strong in reaching out. It's a resource that's there for you, and they can give you tools and tips to help you get through the day and whatever may be going on that you're working through and need to process. And also know that any mental condition could just be temporary, just like some of our physical ailments are temporary. So next slide.
So I wanted to throw out a
Oh,
little
go
bit
ahead.
about EAP if I could. And I'm transparent. Working for a mental health organization allowed me to be three things: transparent, right? I'm very transparent in the things I say, but also bold in what self-care means for me. Because if it's conflicting with my boundaries, I can't be the best person that I can be. So I love it that Jackie mentioned that it's confidential and have ownership of your EAP. When I go to my therapist, and yes, I have one, I love her, and I tell her, I know I'm going to crack you up. Don't write a book about me. You don't have permission. But we are able to just download so much information. And sometimes I go and I don't have anything, and I learn so much. And then sometimes I go and I have some things I need to talk about. But the reason I threw out EAP and wanted to chime in, I didn't particularly like the EAP representative. You have to like your therapist. You have to like your person. And so what I did some research. I found a therapist that worked for me, that knew a little bit about what I deal with daily. And she said, oh, I can be added to EAP, but it's going to take a little work. Well, then let's get it, because my self-care, my therapy, managing my emotions matters. So don't think just because you have this one EAP person that you're not able to go in and find somebody that works for you.
Excellent advice.
So we actually want to thank our sponsors, and we could not offer this session complimentary without them. But with saying that, we want to make sure that everybody has enough time for questions. And so there's a couple of things that went straight, particularly to the panelists, that we need to discuss before we jump into the questions that Mallory's going to start presenting. But there's a couple of things at the beginning that I want to talk about as far as being that support person, right? And that stigma element. So one of the things I want to say is when you're in a space that you don't feel safe and you don't want to be perceived as a certain type of way, say weak, say struggling, say have a mental illness, because there's so much stigma surrounded by that. How do you tell somebody in a position of authority to help you while keeping your boundaries in place? It's got to be a transparent conversation. One of the things that I love about working for Mental Health America was that we had that safe space. You can go into Jackie's office, or you can go into Tom's office, or your immediate supervisor, and say, I'm not having a good day. It's so much going on. And the support that was felt across the board was amazing. They will say things like, well, maybe you need to take off for the rest of the day, because we can't pour from an empty glass. We have to be full. Our body's going to take what we need, and then the world's going to take everything else. So set your boundaries and say statements like, you know what? I want this to be a safe space, and I want to share something with you that is confidential, and I'm only telling you. That does three things right there. That tells your supervisor that, number one, they're trusting you. Number two, that they're about to reveal some things that's going to help them be more productive if you can support. And number three, this is me screaming silently that I'm going through a crisis. Can you help me? You're going to feel emboldened after that. So keep your boundaries in place, definitely. Always keep your boundaries in place. And you don't have to always do, well, I feel this way. You can talk about it in third person, because their supervisor, they're going to understand what's going on. Okay. And if they don't, then let's reach out to your EAP person and let them provide some techniques and strategies to help you. You might need to have a, oh, what's the word, Jackie? It's escaping me. You might have to have somebody who comes in on your behalf and talks with you and say, she's very, very private, and she asked me to be in this conversation with her as her support. Okay. What is that person called? It's escaping me. You see how my brain's working?
I do. Or an advocate.
An advocate. Absolutely. Yeah. You might want to have an advocate. Okay. And so I'm going to pause the other questions that we're going to ask, and I'm going to let Mallory jump in, because I could take us down a rabbit hole on so many great information, but I want to rein this thing in.
Thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. So for all those watching right now, if you have questions, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A. We do have a few questions to get started with. First question, in this COVID climate, it sometimes feels like the expectation is to work more to almost prove your worth. How can we combat the mentality that working more doesn't always define our success?
That is a great question. One thing importantly that I want you to remember is that statement that I made, and I'm actually going to go back to that slide if you bear with me. It is here. Not everything is your job. Remind yourself that everything is not your responsibility. I love my type A people and my type B people, but we need each other to create a balance. I'm 100% type A. And so if I hear a coworker struggling, I'm like, oh, I can help you. And I got 5 different deadlines. That's not helping me and that's not helping them because they're waiting on me, but also the boss is waiting on me or the schools are waiting on me. So how do we stop that? How do we balance that? We say to our coworker, or we say to our friends, I want to be there for you, but I've got to finish this deadline. Let's schedule a time either after work or let's schedule a time, these are for personal items, of course, or next week or the next couple of days that we can sit down and help you, get through whatever obstacles or challenges you're facing. It's a great question because you got to know your own worth, right? You got to make sure that you're not crossing those boundaries between work and personal, because that's when you start feeling really, really weighed down.
And Mallory and Desiree, for me, most of us work in such deadline-driven jobs, and also are measured by productivity. Maybe if you're in sales or something, you have goals. All of us have goals, but for me, your work is going to show up in your numbers. And if you can get something done in 3 to 4 hours and meet your deadline and meet your goals, then to me, it's crazy to sit there for 8 and try to look busy. And you will know if you have that strong relationship with your coworkers and your supervisors, they're going to know your strengths and what you can do and if you're delivering and if you're not. And hopefully it's a compassionate enough environment too, where somebody can say, you know what, you're off a little bit today. Is everything okay? And then start a conversation.
And I want to build on what Jackie said. One thing that you have to remember, you might not like all of your coworkers. That's okay, but you have to have a professionalism and a respect that's there. For the ones that you have challenges with and you wouldn't say, hey, let's go to lunch, it's still you still have to adult, right? We still have to meet those responsibilities. But I guarantee if you sit down and do that exercise about finding your support circle, you're going to find one colleague that you can resonate with. And if your voice is not strong enough, their voice might be. And if not, both of y'all can go in and say, hey, these are some issues that we're dealing with. What would you recommend? And that colleague and you together will protect some of that confidentiality and those boundaries of you not wanting to be completely exposed, because we recognize that's not easy. It took me 40 plus years to get here, right? And so I'm not saying that it's not unrealistic for you not to have people in your environment that doesn't support you, but there's somebody. So identify that one person and have a conversation.
Thank you both. Great points. We've got one more question, unless there's anybody else that wants to ask a question, be sure to put it in the Q&A. How could workplaces make a greater focus on employee mental health? Generationally, I'm an outlier in my work community, and so sometimes it feels challenging to share my personal challenges with coworkers who may disagree about mental health concerns.
Good question. One thing, just knowing that 1 in 5 people do have a diagnosable mental illness at any time. So when you stop and think that 20% of the population either has an illness that has already been identified or the potential to be identified, I think that would help all of us to just be a little bit more compassionate and aware and cognizant of our circles, be they at work or in our private lives. Again, I think the Gen Z and the Gen Y and the millennials are a little more open in talking about mental illness or anxiety and depression. I think some of that's been brought about the way that they have grown up in social media and are always on. They don't always stop and take those technology breaks like some of us in X and boomers may do. I guess that's one of the funniest things I've seen in social media so far is how it's taken the pandemic for Gen X to become known again. We were the first generation of the latchkey kids. We're used to being alone. we don't have a problem going home, staying by ourselves, grabbing a book, watching something old on TV like Andy Griffith or Leave It to Beaver. It just doesn't take as much to entertain us. We can stop. But we also weren't as open with talking about feelings and mental illness either. So it's things that need to be learned, and every age bracket has certain challenges and opportunities, and I think we just handle all of that with empathy and a little understanding.
I love that. And another aspect that I want you to think about is the cultural differences. And if we sit there and we examine the different ethnicities, the races, the culture experience, you have the different biases that come into play. And you've got to be able to identify that, number one, as a professional, as a person, and then as an administrator, right? So not all of us are going to feel comfortable because we don't trust the medical system with history of things that have proven that it's going to fail. But at some point, you are going to have to do the research and find somebody there that can help you. I deal with that with my older matriarchs in my family. They just don't want to go to healthcare physicians to get quality care. And so we deal with the stigmas associated with that. We also deal with the stigmas associated with suicide. I am a survivor of a family member who died by suicide. And it's hard because you have to deal with so many different things and so much blame there. So again, like I said, Mallory, you got to pull me back in. I'll start a whole nother session, but I want you guys to know it's important for you to recognize that stigma does exist for the mental health community. And when people ask you, they're asking for help, and they're only going to do that in a quiet whisper. So don't make it about you. Never make it about you, particularly if that person's choosing to come to you. So I know you're thinking, well, that's sort of a conflict of what you said earlier, to make appointment. If you're that person's friend, you know when they're in need. Okay. So sometimes we have to pause and say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna work extra hard to get this taken care of. I need to make sure she's okay. And you can always ask, how can I support you? That opens up a lot of different conversations. And my last tip is, don't hear or listen to respond. Listen to hear. Listen to hear what they're going on. Be empathetic, be sympathetic, and then just ask them at the end, what do you need from me? How can I support you? These are the things that I can do. But don't solve their problems for you. Number one, we're not therapists, right? But number two, they just want that support. I read the best thing the other day. There was okay, so full disclosure, I'm a TikTok addict. Raise your hand if you agree. Okay, so I gave you a moment. But one of the things that I saw somebody post was, I have avoided so many different conflicts in my life by asking people, do you want support or do you want answers? Man, that's magical when you talk about your support circle, because then because I'm true type A, so I want them both. But sometimes I just want to be held. So those are just some things I want to throw out at you.
Thank you both. We have another question here. What do you all anticipate being the challenges of mental health when people who've been working from home for a year transition back to the office?
I think it's going to look very different. I know just even in our own office, our CEO is kind of an old school leader, which is funny because he and I are only about 4 or 5 years apart, but he reminds me so much more of a boomer than an Xer. And I think we're working on flexibility plans because we know that the work can be done from home. And we also know that just the sheer nature of some of the work that the employees in our office do takes a stronger toll on their mental and physical health than some of the other ones. So we're going to work on some flexible work schedules. We may, so Desiree, don't quote me on this one, it's still in the talks, but may incorporate some more mental health days into the sick time PTO balance. Just because we recognize it is going to be different. And we're going to work on some shared office arrangements. For example, the CFO and I, when we come back, are going to share an office because we're running out of space. And why do we want to commit a big, huge rent commitment lease when she and I can share an office, agree to be here on Mondays at the same time and not talk the whole time, but actually get some stuff done. And then we'll alternate days the rest of the week on being in the office. So it's just going to take different planning. And I know not every environment can do that type of thing, but I think there have been lessons learned over the last year, and probably, I don't know, we're probably another 6 months into this, I would think. And employers are just going to have to roll with it where they can. So
I want to add from a employee standpoint, right? All of that was amazing. And those are some great tips for any administrator that's on the line. Jot those down. We don't care if you steal them. We want you to incorporate this type of environment for your employees because it will reduce turnover, right? But as an employee, we have had to deal with so many different things in one space. That's going to be a cost when we return back to the office. Some of us are not dealing well. We see the news every day, and our teenagers are going absolutely insane. They are doing a lot of different things that's out of characteristic for them. And they're angry. They were angry pre-COVID, but now they're angry, aggressive, and violent. So we have to manage all of that and still worry about our kids' mental state. So we're here as advocates saying, get that therapy session set up, right? Get those EAP sessions set up. Get your support circle in place and be transparent in a way that still incorporates your boundaries. Because if you are dealing with your social, your spiritual, your parent, I tell Jackie and some of my other coworkers all the time, I'm in 8th grade again and I hate it. I didn't like it the first time. And so I'm struggling. And what is with this new math? If I get the same answer, why do I have to go back and figure it out your way, right? And so I'm seeing my son in different spaces and his anger because he's a teenager and he's not allowed to go out and be with his friends. And so you got cyberbullying that's never stopped, right? It's even more transparent. So circling back around, as adults, we're gonna have to be vigilant. We're going to have to take accountability for our actions, and we're going to have to sort of transition back into a space where everybody's mental health matters, not just our own. And that's going to be difficult, but we've given you some tools. So hopefully you'll be able to work on those and create a strategies and healthcare plan for yourself.
Thank you both so much. This has been so enlightening and an excellent session. I don't have any more questions right now. So we're going to end, but before we end,
Before you go into that information, I want to show a stigma video. I didn't know, it's like 2 minutes, but Jackie gave me this video when I first started, and it's amazing. It helps people understand what stigmas are. So I want to actually play this real quick if you'll give me a chance.
And I was like, yeah, right, man. Oh, my head. Please don't complain. It'll ruin the vibe.
Okay, let me restart it. Technology. Okay.
I was like, yeah, right, man. Oh, my head.
Please don't complain. It'll ruin the vibe.
Just.
Jackie, can you see it?
It's like you're not even trying to walk.
Have you ever tried not having diarrhea?
God, my migraine's killing me.
You take meds for that?
Oh my God, dude, I cut myself and it looks really, really bad.
Some people have it way worse than you do. You gotta chill out.
So I guess you're not going out with us tonight. Again. You're such a flake.
Oh man, I really think I sprained it this time. I gotta go see my physical therapist.
You go to therapy?
Yeah?
Whatever, weirdo.
Can you hold on 1 second?
Honestly, your attitude sucks.
You taking another insulin shot?
Yeah, I kind of have to.
Have you ever thought about dropping the pharmaceuticals and fighting this the natural way?
My diabetes?
Enough is enough. It's a beautiful day, man. It's time to get up.
Dude, I just got eye surgery.
Yeah, like a week ago.
Well, it still hurts.
Ooh, I think your friend hurt himself.
I need help.
Nah, he's fine.
I absolutely love that video for so many reasons. It talks about the stigmas that are surrounding us, intentionally or unintentionally. Do you go to therapy? Well, I kind of have to. I need to get better. My bone needs to heal. You take medicine? I have diabetes. What do you mean? And so some of these things are so important and pivotal, and shows us that some of our words are very impactful, particularly when we don't know. So when you leave today and you have people in your family or your friend circle that are struggling with mental illnesses, do the research and find out the better things to talk to them about, instead of stigmatizing them and making them feel bad for a situation they can't control. That's all I have, Valerie. Thank you for allowing me to show that.
That was great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you and Jackie and your time today. So our next Checkerboard chat is coming up on February 19th, and we're going to kind of stick in this COVID world. We're going to talk about self-care and healthy relationships during COVID-19. So we hope you will join us for that. Again, thank you so much, Desiree and Jackie. We appreciate you so much for being here today, and have a great day, everybody, and go Vols and Lady Vols.